The Empire had ruled for 8 millennia, its fleets blotting out stars, its warriors crushing worlds into dust. Until the day a single, silent ship drifted into their space, and erased an entire armada with a whisper of light. The last transmission? 4 words that ignited a panic across the galaxy. This was just reconnaissance. The fleet is coming. The void of deep space whispered as the fleet assembled. 400 Imperial warships formed the iron wall of the Oryx 17th warhost, their colossal hulls blotting out the stars. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of vaporizing planets. On the flagship Dominion's Wrath, Admiral Zoreth sneered from the command throne, obsidian armor gleaming under crimson lights. "Report," Zoreth barked. "Contact detected, Admiral." The sensor officer's voice trembled. "Unknown vessel. Single signature. Approaching at sublight, slowly." The bridge fell into stunned silence. A lone ship? At the Empire's most heavily fortified border? Zoreth laughed bitterly. "Some primitive relic from the rim. Target it." The screen magnified. A black, dagger-like silhouette drifted forward through the stars. No energy spikes. No transponder. A ghost. "Open wideband channel. I want this insolent fool to know who they mock." The Imperial anthem roared through space as Zoreth's voice followed, sharp as a blade. "This is Admiral Zoreth of the Oryx Dominion. You are trespassing in forbidden space. Identify yourself or be destroyed." For a moment, nothing. Then a male voice answered, calm, cold, and utterly unafraid. "This is Commander Elias Rourke of the human warship Arcos. Your demand is denied." Zoreth blinked. "Human? That species is extinct. You're wrong on both counts. And you're out of time." The transmission cut. The bridge erupted in laughter. Zoreth stood, towering and smug. "Arm all weapons. Prepare for target obliteration." The firing orders were given. Hundreds of capital-class cannons locked onto the lone black ship. Zoreth raised his fist. "Fire!" 1,000 beams of plasma, antimatter torpedoes, rail slugs, and gravitational warheads converged at once. The void itself seemed to scream under the onslaught. A sun's worth of destructive force tore through space toward the single target. When the firestorm cleared, the black ship floated untouched. Not a single scratch. The laughter stopped. "Impossible," Zoreth whispered. The voice returned. "First lesson, Admiral, you never had a chance." A cascade of unknown energy signatures surged from the Arcos. The bridge lights on Dominion's Wrath flickered violently. One by one, entire squadrons vanished from sensors. "Where are they?" Zoreth roared. The sensor officer's voice broke. "They're gone. Erased." On the main screen, the feeds switched to external cams. Ships twisted grotesquely, pulled inward by shimmering distortions. Hulls crumpled like paper as Grav Singularity lances consumed them in perfect silence. The Oryx doom veil, gone in a blink. The Emperor's judgment, folded like an origami corpse. Zoreth staggered as Dominion's Wrath itself groaned under the impossible pull. Bulkheads creaked. Emergency klaxons wailed. "Full retreat!" he bellowed. "Get us out of here!" The helm officer's fingers danced over controls. "It's too late! He's locked us!" Static swallowed his voice. The bridge viewport darkened. The Arcos loomed larger, still silent, still unmoving, still whole. Rourke's voice came through again, lower, darker. "I offered you a choice." The power core on Dominion's Wrath overloaded. Zoreth saw the fire crawl across the deck plates toward him and screamed. The Arcos sat alone once more. Across the galaxy, emergency beacons screamed into the void. The entire Oryx 17th warhost had ceased to exist in less than 60 seconds. Only fragmented, static-riddled footage remained, ships twisting into oblivion, crews vanishing without a trace, and the cold, terrible black ship drifting like the specter of death itself. Inside the Imperial Senate on Veridon Prime, Empress Shireen stared at the feed in horror. The elite generals and warlords were silent, frozen. The Empire had not tasted fear in 8,000 cycles. Until now. The message played again, burned into every Imperial channel. This was only reconnaissance. The fleet is coming. The chamber erupted into panic. Supreme Warlord Kelvax smashed his armored fist through the marble floor. They lie. There is no human fleet. They can't. The Empress silenced him with a raised hand. Her eyes never left the image of the Arcos. Her voice was hollow. They just destroyed 400 of our ships without firing a single shot. Kelvax spat. A trick. An illusion. An illusion doesn't erase the war host, Kelvax. From her seat, she leaned forward and whispered words that chilled the room more than any declaration of war. Find out everything. Who they are. Where they came from. What they want. Because if that was a scout. She paused, voice trembling. What horror follows behind it? Far beyond, hidden in the black between stars, the full human vanguard armada drifted unseen. Dozens of planet-sized war platforms, countless dreadnoughts, and entire legions of death-world-hardened soldiers waited. On the bridge of the Arcos, Rourke stood before the viewing pane. He gave no orders. No congratulations. Only silence. The cold stars reflected in his eyes. Signal command, Rourke said flatly. Phase 2 begins. The fleet was coming. And this time, no one would survive. The Arcos drifted into high orbit above Veridon Prime, the galactic capital burning like a polished emerald below. The Imperial High Council waited, trembling beneath the towering crystalline spires of the Senate Citadel. In the center of the chamber stood Empress Shireen, her ceremonial armor stiff and radiant under cold white lights. The faces around her betrayed panic masked as pride. They had summoned the invader. The atmospheric distortion began. A deep, subharmonic pulse shook the floor. Whispers spread like wildfire. Then he appeared. Rourke. The human. He materialized at the center of the council floor as if stepping from nothing, tall, armored, his helmet slung under one arm. 2 sentinel drones flanked him, silent machines with spines of weapon arrays. Kelvax drew himself up to his full, monstrous height and sneered. So. The ghost walks among us. You will regret this. Rourke's cold gaze swept the hall. I already regret wasting the energy to come down here. Gasps echoed. Warlords bristled, shifting their hand talons toward hidden weapons. Rourke continued without pause. You've had your fun for centuries. Slaughter. Conquest. Enslavement. It ends now. Empress Shireen's voice was low taut. You murdered 400 of our finest ships. I removed garbage from the stars. You stand alone. Kelvax growled. You cannot intimidate the Dominion. Rourke's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I'm not here to intimidate. I'm here to offer terms. Murmurs flared. The audacity of this creature. The Empress held up a single hand and silence slammed into place. Speak. Rourke stepped forward, voice sharp as a plasma blade. Dismantle your war fleets. Free every bonded species. Abandon your slave worlds. Withdraw from contested systems. End your weapons research on forced bioconversion. Erase the Empire. If you do, you may survive. Stunned disbelief froze the chamber. Kelvax exploded. You dare! Rourke didn't blink. Yes. The warlord thundered toward him, claws extending. The sentinel drone shifted imperceptibly. A single energy spike flared from its wrist. Kelvax stopped, frozen, staring in disbelief at the smoking ruin of the weapon he'd drawn from his hip. The blade's hilt lay disintegrated in his hand. Rourke tilted his head, deadly calm. I'm still talking. Kelvax staggered backward, white with rage. Empress Shireen's voice sliced through the tension. If we refuse? Rourke's eyes hardened. Then I will burn this throne of tyrants down to molecular dust. Your fleet was a test. You failed. The next wave will not be merciful. The room trembled at the implication. A counselor near the back stammered. You're bluffing. Humanity is extinct. You're one ship. Rourke walked to the center and activated a small crystalline cube. A projection erupted, the dark horizon of the human Vanguard Armada, eclipsing distant stars like the slow turn of death itself. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons, planetary siege platforms, orbiting warforges. It was not a fleet. It was an apocalypse waiting to be unchained. A single sentence scrolled in multiple languages beneath the image. This is the advance element. The counselor collapsed backward into his chair. The Empress stared long and hard, her voice distant, hollow. You would destroy all life in our empire? If that's the price, Rourke said. You left us no alternatives long ago. Consider this mercy. Kelvax snarled. We are the chosen architects of order. We civilize the lesser races. You are rabid animals, returned from extinction. Rourke stepped within inches of Kelvax. The warlord towered over him but flinched when Rourke leaned in, voice quiet and lethal. You called us animals once before. That's why you lost. Silence gripped the chamber. Shireen lowered her gaze. How long? 48 hours. Kelvax spun in disbelief. You grant us terms? You should beg for yours. Rourke walked back toward his drones. I do not beg. I do not negotiate. I deliver consequences. 2 rotations. Choose extinction or surrender. With that, he touched his wrist. The atmospheric pulse returned. In an instant he was gone, leaving only the fading shimmer of energy where he had stood. The chamber erupted into chaos. Counselors shouted over each other. Warlords called for immediate war. Advisors pleaded for reconsideration. Shireen sat motionless, staring at the empty space where Rourke had stood. Finally, she whispered what no one dared say aloud. What if we're already too late? Kelvax spat, disgusted. Cowardice. We'll launch everything. Bleed them dry. An aide rushed to the floor. Empress! New transmission! Partial decryption. Message repeating. The chamber fell silent once again. The aide's trembling voice read the words aloud. We're closer than you think. A deathly chill swept the room. Far above Veridon Prime, on the command deck of the Arcos, Commander Rourke stood watching the emerald planets spin slowly below. Status, he ordered. The officer at the console nodded grimly. Vanguard Armada standing by. Cloaked at optimal engagement points. Good. Rourke folded his arms. Send the final signal. The officer hesitated. Are we really going to? We're not here to negotiate. We're here to finish what they started. Rourke's voice dropped to a cold whisper meant only for the stars. Let them pray. It won't help. The countdown began. The fleet was coming. The Arcos hung in the void like a silent judge. On the bridge, Commander Elias Rourke studied the tactical display, his jaw set. Incoming vectors flared crimson. The Empire had made its choice. Contact. Multiple strike wings inbound. The operations officer announced grimly. Oblivion Templar-class assault ships. Boarding configuration. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Of course they sent the Templars. They came fast and brutal, elite death commandos of the Empire's most feared warrior caste. 2 meters tall, fused bioarmor, internal bone blades, and antimatter plasma claws. Every empire in the galaxy whispered the same truth. The Oblivion Templars never failed to slaughter. On the Arcos, they were about to fail. The ship rocked as impact alarms blared. Red lights cascaded across the bridge. Multiple hull breaches. Borders in Sectors 7, 9, 14. Rourke activated internal comms. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Wraith teams, execute Protocol Scythe. No quarter. The comm crackled back instantly. Copy, Scythe engaged. The Arcos' interior shifted like a living thing. Corridors realigned, bulkheads slammed shut, cutting the boarding parties into isolated kill boxes. The first Templar unit found itself sealed inside a dark corridor, weapons ready. The walls hummed. Then they screamed. The liquid neutron fields activated, slicing through metal, armor, and flesh in a flash of vaporized matter. Templars vanished mid-charge, reduced to molecular ash. On Deck 14, the surviving Templars advanced with cold efficiency. They breached the inner core and charged forward, only to find Wraith shock troopers waiting. Clad in jet-black adaptive armor with reactive energy shielding, their human forms blurred as they moved. In unison, they raised their weapons. Rourke's voice played across the comms, low and mocking. "Welcome to Hell." The corridor erupted into a savage close-quarters war. Templars slashed with antimatter claws, gouging smoking scars across bulkheads. Wraiths countered with high-velocity flechette rounds and quantum bayonets, designed to pierce even Templar bioarmor at the atomic level. A Templar lunged at a Wraith squad leader, slashing down with both claws. The human ducked, spun under the blow, and drove a bayonet upward under the beast's chin. The blade flashed white-hot as it atomized the creature's skull. One by one, the Templars fell, but not before taking a heavy toll. Blood, armor fragments, and scorched metal littered the floors. Still, the race held. In the core engineering deck, the Templar warlord emerged. Nearly 3 meters tall, fused with dark matter symbiotics, it was a nightmare made flesh. It roared, smashing through barriers with contemptuous ease. The Wraith troopers braced for the impossible fight. Then Rourke's voice snapped into their comms. "Fall back. I'll handle it." The warlord charged toward the last bulkhead. The doors hissed open. Standing alone, unarmored save for an old, battered combat suit, was Commander Rourke. In his hand, a quantum-forged bayonet, white-hot with energy. He stepped forward without hesitation. The warlord sneered. "You are alone, human!" Rourke tilted his head. "I'm enough." The monster struck first, a blinding arc of plasma claws meant to tear flesh and bone in one stroke. Rourke sidestepped by millimeters and countered, driving the bayonet into the Templar's joint, severing the energy conduit. Sparks erupted as the beast staggered. They circled in a lethal dance. The warlord was faster, stronger, more brutal. Rourke was colder, smarter, deadlier. Every strike he deflected with surgical precision, carving tiny cuts into armor plates, disabling servos, draining the beast's advantage one piece at a time. "You are vermin," the warlord spat, blood oozing from ruptured seals. "Keep thinking that," Rourke said. "It's why you're dying." The final strike came when the warlord lunged in blind fury. Rourke pivoted, rolled behind, and drove the quantum bayonet deep into the base of the creature's skull. The Templar convulsed violently, then collapsed in silence. Rourke straightened and exhaled slowly. "Engineering secure," he reported into the comm. Across the ship, the last remaining Templars were hunted down with cold efficiency. Not one survived. The bridge doors opened. Bloodied, armor scorched, Rourke stepped in. "Status." The officer turned from the tactical display, eyes wide with disbelief. "They're gone. All boarding parties neutralized." Rourke's gaze flicked to the Imperial Fleet signature outside the viewport. "They thought a boarding action would weaken us. They were wrong," signaled the Empress. The channel opened. The Empress's face appeared pale, composed only by sheer force of will. Behind her, council members whispered and argued furiously off-screen. "You survived." Rourke smiled faintly. "They didn't. You will not escape Veridon's gravity well. Our full home fleet is deploying now." Rourke's voice hardened to steel. "You really don't understand. We've barely begun." The Empress inhaled sharply. "You killed the Empire's deadliest warriors and speak as if it's nothing?" "Because it is," Rourke replied coldly. "I warned you. 2 rotations. I gave you mercy. Now I give you certainty." He tapped a console. The ship's forward sensors displayed a new image, hyperspace fractures forming along the outer rim of Veridon space. Dozens. Hundreds. The Empress stared, voice barely a whisper. "What is that?" The sensors pinged. Human vanguard ships began emerging. Leviathan dreadnoughts, Wraith-class destroyers, sentient war constructs, war platforms larger than moons. Rourke leaned forward. "The fleet is coming." The channel went dead. The bridge crew stared at the growing armada in stunned silence. Rourke crossed his arms, watching without emotion. Let them come, he murmured to himself. This time, we're ready. The first wave of human warships surged forward, weapons primed. Phase 2 had begun. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in waves, silent leviathans that dwarfed the stars themselves. The Oryx High Command had deployed everything: 600 Imperial warships, 12 planetary defense arrays, 3 death moons. The void between them and the planet Veridon became a living wall of weapons, engines, and arrogance. On the bridge of the Arcos, Commander Elias Rourke stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back as tactical displays lit up with enemy signatures. Enemy fleet forming blockade perimeter, the operations officer reported. Full spectrum weapons lock. They mean to pin us here. Good, Rourke said flatly. Send the order. Far off, the human dreadnoughts realigned into kill formations. At Rourke's signal, the Arcos transmitted one final message to the enemy command frequency. The calm, unflinching voice of humanity's executioner filled every bridge, war room, and chamber of the Empire's fleet. You refused the gift of mercy. Now you will learn fear. Admiral Zeras of the Empire scoffed on his command throne aboard the Emperor's Dominion. Fire all batteries. Erase them. The Empire struck first. Energy lances, plasma storms, hyperkinetic warheads filled the void in an avalanche of unstoppable force. The blackness of space lit like a false sunrise. Imperial commanders cheered as the horizon burned. Then the fire faded. The human fleet stood untouched. Impossible! Zeras roared. Human shields, quantum-phased, multidimensional frequency fields, had absorbed the full strike and dissipated it harmlessly into subspace. Before panic could spread, the human retaliation began. Leviathan dreadnoughts opened with singularity cannons, tearing open localized black holes within the Imperial lines. Dozens of capital ships folded inward into oblivion without a sound. Sentient kill platforms deployed autonomous hunter drones, each the size of a corvette and armed with nanodisintegration beams. They swept through squadrons like razors through silk. Empire formations crumbled as Wraith-class destroyers punched through their flanks with impossible speed. The Wraiths were ghosts, vanishing from scanners only to reappear within knife-fight range and gut Imperial warships with precision strikes. The command deck of the Emperor's Dominion descended into chaos. Shields failing! Multiple breaches! Deploy the Death Moons! The 3 colossal Death Moons fired simultaneously. Planet-killer beams capable of slicing through planetary cores stabbed toward the heart of the human fleet. Rourke watched them coldly. Activate Nexus Veil! A shimmering rift tore open across the human line. The beams passed harmlessly through phased space and vanished into distant nothingness. The Death Moons paused, their systems scrambling to reacquire targets. The Leviathans responded. From the Arcos, Rourke issued a single word. Fire! Human planet cracker warheads launched. The Death Moons never stood a chance. The first exploded into a white-hot nova, taking hundreds of Oryx ships with it. The second was torn in half by graviton shear bombs. The third tried to flee, only to be impaled by an incoming human dreadnought moving at relativistic velocity, slicing clean through its core. On Veridon Prime, the Council watched in silent horror as their grand fleet was reduced to wreckage and fire within minutes. Empress Shirene's voice was a whisper. We were gods. They are devils, a general muttered. Rourke's voice returned over the open comm channel. You're beginning to understand. Too late. The remaining Imperial ships broke formation and attempted to scatter. Rourke shook his head. Target retreating vessels. No survivors. The human fleet obeyed with ruthless efficiency. Interdiction webs locked down escape vectors, trapping fleeing ships like flies in amber. Wraith hunter groups descended onto crippled vessels, boarding with overwhelming force, dragging officers from their command thrones and executing them without ceremony. In less than 20 minutes, the proudest military power the galaxy had ever known ceased to exist. On the Arcos, the bridge crews sat in stunned silence as sensor data confirmed complete victory. Rourke's voice was devoid of triumph. Status: Enemy fleet neutralized. No human casualties. Broadcast. The channel went live. Across the galaxy, every surviving Imperial world, every neutral observer, every defiant warlord heard the voice of Elias Rourke. This was not war. This was a correction. He let the words hang, cold and absolute. You have 48 hours to dismantle your empires, free your slaves, and stand down from all aggressive postures. If you resist, we will return. There was no bravado. No theatrics. Just certainty. The feed cut. The bridge crew turned to him, tension crackling in the recycled air. They'll surrender, someone murmured. Rourke's eyes remained locked on the burning debris fields. Some will. The rest will become examples. The human fleet held position as the wreckage drifted, silent tombs of a civilization brought low by the very race it had once enslaved. On every remaining Imperial world, leaders now faced the most terrifying truth of all. The humans had not come to conquer. They had come to end the game. The galaxy trembled as the human banners darkened the stars. The fleet was coming. The transmission ended, and the silence that followed spread across the galaxy like a shroud. On Veridon Prime, the Imperial Senate chamber was no longer a place of power. Its rulers sat slumped, stunned, surrounded by the distant echoes of what had just happened. Empress Shireen stared at the fractured tactical displays, the wreckage of her fleet still orbiting the capital, thousands of burning hulks that had once been the pride of the Oryx Dominion. The door to the chamber hissed open. Supreme Warlord Kelvax, bloodied and limping, staggered in with 2 guards dragging him by the arms. His armor was cracked, his gaze was not. He looked at the Empress and bared his teeth. You will still surrender to them? He spat. Shireen's voice was cold and hollow. You saw what they did. We have no choice. They cannot be everywhere. We will rebuild. Regrow. He struggled against his captors. They are flesh. We are eternal. Shireen stood and walked slowly to where the warlord knelt. No, Kelvax. You still don't understand. She nodded to the guards. They dropped him unceremoniously. You were always too stupid to see what even I now see. Kelvax sneered. What? Her voice lowered to a whisper. They never sent their fleet. Kelvax froze. His mouth opened, then closed. You lie. She turned to the wide windows as the human ships loomed silently above the smoking orbit. No. The fleet we faced was a spear tip, a decoy to bait us into overextending. There are more out there. Watching. Waiting. Judging. The room chilled at the realization. A nearby aide stumbled and fell to his knees. We cannot survive. On the Arcos, Commander Rourke studied the sensor readings. The planet's defenses were gone. No movement. No threats. The deck officer approached hesitantly. Incoming message, Commander. Planet-wide surrender. Rourke didn't react. Acknowledged. Broadcast fleet-wide. Cease fire. The human armada stood down in unison, weapons powering down in perfect discipline. Rourke tapped the console and opened a private channel to Earth Command. Veridon has fallen. Empire leadership broken. Phase 1 complete. The voice of Admiral Kane crackled through the void. Understood. Do we proceed with occupation? No, Rourke said firmly. Pull back. There was a pause. Repeat? Leave the planet. Leave the wreckage. We didn't come to rule them. Let the survivors crawl from the ashes and remember why the stars went dark. The crew exchanged glances, unsure if they had heard correctly. The second Wraith commander stepped forward. Sir, what if they rebuild? Rourke turned slowly, his expression made of stone. If they rebuild, we'll know. And then we return. The words carried weight none could deny. Back on Veridon Prime, the Empress fell heavily into her throne. The chamber doors burst open once more. An aide, pale and breathless, rushed in, holding a trembling data slate. Empress, new sensor contacts detected outside the system. Kelvax's broken laughter filled the hall. See? They're coming to finish us. The age shook his head violently. No. They're withdrawing. The entire fleet, it's gone. The council erupted in disbelief. Shireen remained silent, staring out the windows as the black shapes of the human warships flickered and vanished into hyperspace, one by one. Kelvax whispered, stunned. They could have taken everything. Shireen nodded slowly. They took what mattered. Our illusion of power. On the Arcos, the final ship of the Vanguard disappeared into the dark. Rourke stood alone on the bridge. The stars returned to their quiet watch. Plot a course, he said. To where, Commander? Nowhere. Everywhere. There are others like them. His voice hardened. And they'll need reminders too. The deck officer nodded silently. The ship slipped away into the void. On countless worlds, the legend spread. The humans had come, not as conquerors but as executioners of tyranny. They left behind only their message, broadcast endlessly across every system, in every tongue. We will not return, unless you force us to. Pray you never hear this voice again. Entire civilizations reshaped their empires overnight. Slavery ended. Oppression fell. Warlords vanished or fled into the uncharted dark. Fear became law. Centuries later, children of distant stars would still whisper the name of the black ship that erased the greatest empire in history without ever claiming a single world. The Arcos. The Ghost Fleet. The monsters from the Death World who came once from extinction and rewrote the rules of power. The stars remained silent. The fleet was always coming.